Hello, welcome to another Alpha Strike replay video. My name is Adam and I'm joined by my friend Tarron.
Hey buddy, how we doing?
I was going to say, this is my boy Tarron, which still would have worked out good.
It still would have worked good. It's an intro either way.
Yes.
Screw it.
So what are we talking about today?
We are talking one of my favourite things, although it's like horrific war crimes and stuff. We're talking minefields.
Yeah. Yes. Wasn't there a song about those? Minefields? Was it Prodigy or something? They made a song.
I think it was Firestar.
Yeah, I think so. Someone will tell us. All right, so minefields. It's considering it's the future, there's quite a few different types of minefields, but we'll talk about sort of the basics of how it works in the game.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about some of the varieties. Now, this is not going to be a complete of everything. We're just sort of giving you some basics.
Because there's a lot out there.
There is, yeah.
Yeah. The main one at the moment is that they are area effect weapons.
Yes.
Which means they hit everything in the hex and above the hex.
Yep.
But also that, generally speaking, you have to play them with the blind rules. So you need to use a map that you can in some way designate a spot. So the map sheets that come with the box sets are perfect because they have the numbered hexes.
Correct.
So they recommend that you don't ever use more than five mined locations per map sheet that you are per person.
Yeah.
I would suggest that you give them to defending players, but that's just me. If you've got a scenario that has a definite attacker and defender, then the defender can have access to minefields. The attacker probably not so much. But it's not ruled out for anybody. The point is they recommend you stick to 5 per person per map sheet. Because otherwise you just end up with them everywhere.
Yeah, true. If you can't get a sort of a third player to be a judge for it, just get the defender to write down 5 locations on a piece of paper so it doesn't change, and then that's fair.
Yep.
It's probably the easiest thing to do.
That's the easiest way to do it.
We always encourage people to make their own scenarios too. We enjoy doing it, so yeah, definitely worth doing, and adding minefields to it is good. And
there's no reason you can't make them pay for it with BV. If they want to use them, they have to buy the ammunition or something with BV. That's no biggie. Go for it.
Probably something in tech manual that you could use. I can't imagine it being too expensive, so it shouldn't unbalance it too much. But
shouldn't do. But they might not get quite as cool a pilot in one of their mechs, or they might get a slightly smaller mech than one of the others. So it might hit it either way.
It does give you a chance to use some of the other units that are out there, like engineers, minesweepers and whatnot, which we'll probably talk about that at some point.
At some point. Then there are specialised mine clearing devices, ammunition units, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah. So we'll go into that at some point, hopefully. The other thing you have to keep track of with mines is their density. And that's probably what BattleTech really comes down to, is just record keeping.
Yeah.
But table tech. Every minefield has a density. It will be from 5 points to 30 points. 30 points is the maximum density that you can have in a single minefield. Okay? So that is basically the damage that it's going to do.
Yeah.
Right? So the density equals the damage. So you have to write down where it is, and you need to write down how big it is. So you can have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 point minefield at location, whatever it is. Okay?
I think it is important to note that you have to actually clear a mine area, clear a hex of mines before they're actually all gone for your standard ones.
For conventional minefields, so what we'll do is we'll bring up a little table here. It's on 208 of TAC Ops. Bing! That's called the Minefield Density Table, and you're lucky because that's pretty much the only table that is involved with mines.
Yeah.
It means less binging.
So table tech just got a whole lot easier.
Yeah, a whole lot easier. What you'll see there is a target number next to each density of minefield. Now, when a unit that would normally set off that type of minefield, and you'll see why I clarified that in a minute, that would normally set off that type of minefield moves into that area, it has to roll on that density table. So if it's a 30-point minefield, they roll 2d6, so they get a 7 or more, they set the mines off.
Yeah.
Okay? They set the mine off, let's say 30-point mine, they take 30 points of damage, and you use the kick location table. So there's 30 points of damage to a leg.
Yeah, that's nasty.
One leg.
That is nasty.
Well, I think they do 5-point groupings, don't they?
But that's still bad.
Yeah.
Like it's a 50-50 of hitting one leg or the other on a standard
And it's
biped. So.
6 5-point groupings. So for a 30-point minefield, it's 6 5-point groupings, which means that any light mech that wanders in, if you wandered a locust into a 30-point minefield, it would probably be obliterated if it set them off.
Yeah.
It takes that damage, and then after the attack is resolved, the person who owns the minefield has to also roll on the minefield density table for conventional minefields to see if the density is reduced. So a whole heap of the mines just went off. Did it actually make a dent in the minefield itself? And if you roll that number or higher, then you have to reduce it by one step. So a 30 will go down to a 25, 25 down to 20, etc., down to 5. Oh. Now you can't reduce a conventional minefield below 5 points in a game without actually clearing it. You have to put some sort of clearing thing into it in order to do it. It won't ever go below 5 with just this reduction, okay? And that's important to remember because even 5 points of damage can do a bit.
That's right.
Yeah.
Geez, you can get a lot of value out of a single hex if you roll really well.
Yes. Yes, you can.
It's nasty.
And you'll remember, if you don't remember, go back down through our list and have a look at the missile weapon ammunition types that we did for the Thunder variants.
Yeah.
Because it was the advanced, I think it was, or actually spread out to multiple hexes.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you end up with like an area of 10-point minefields. And I love that. That's great. That's brilliant.
But you can top up a conventional hex as
Yes.
well. So it just can't go above 30. So you can just start restocking it with some ranged weapons and things like that. So like the LRMs, you can convert those to lay mines, or the Arrow 4.
Arrow 4 can deliver minefields as well.
So it just tops it up if it starts getting a bit low.
And I'm reasonably certain that somewhere in the experimental stuff there's an artillery shell that delivers minefields as well.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's there. But yeah, if it doesn't matter if you're the defender or the attacker, taking at least a ton of thunder ammo in some sort of reasonable sized LRM launcher is not a bad idea. It's not an awful idea. I mean, you're not kicking, you're not actually putting a unit in jeopardy, you're not doing any extra bits and pieces. All you have to do is remember that there's a minefield there and it's this many points.
Yep. And
then roll the dice when it comes up. And I mean, with minefields, most people won't actually walk into them. They'll go round. So you can use them for area denial.
Yeah, that's right. Infantry are interesting with that because they're lighter. They actually get a -1 bonus on checks to avoid sort of setting them off and things like that. That also includes battle armor because they're technically infantry.
Yes, technically. So what you can do is, like we say, you can top up. That was the other thing with conventional minefields. So when a ground vehicle suffers damage from any minefield, it must automatically roll once on the motive system damage table.
On the side.
As though it came from the side.
Which is the worst.
Which is bad.
Yeah.
We haven't really done vehicles, but veteran players out there will know that's bad, and the rest of you will just have to trust us. It's bad.
It's bad. It's funny if you're delivering mines, like through bombs or a ranged thing or whatever it is. If you have a building in that location, it lands on the roof, which makes sense, of course.
You've all had those urban environment games where everybody's just leaping from building to building with their jump capable mechs. This can put a definite dent in their fun.
Surprise! Boom!
20-point minefield on the roof.
There's your mech. It's gone.
And that's, again, taking a unit with some thunder ammo and like a 15 or a 20 LRM rack.
Yep.
Solid stuff. Solid stuff.
Well, if you've got mechs like, say, the Spider or whatever, which is really fast and jump capable, that helps a lot. Because their mobility, they rely on their mobility. If they're jumping from building to building, if you can shut that down, it's really good.
And that's with laying them with an actual like weapon. So
like bombs,
like artillery, like thunder ammo.
Yeah.
When you deliver them like that, they can be invisible. You can do it stealthily, right? If you want to play that way. If you don't want to use those rules, and you don't have to, you can just say, I've put a minefield there and it's this many points, and then hopefully they'll avoid jumping on that roof.
Yeah.
Right? But if in most instances below, it's up to the player laying the minefield to determine if the opponent can see the minefield and either make it visible or not. If you have a neutral party, obviously you can do that. But if a friendly unit has line of sight to the target hex where a weapon delivered minefield is laid, then it's automatically visible, right? So someone will know if they're watching you launch it and hit that hex, they know. If a friendly unit does not have line of sight to the target hex where a weapon delivered minefield is laid, nor does a friendly unit have line of sight to the attacker that laid the minefield, it's hidden just as if it had been placed by the player before play began.
Yeah.
So if you can't see the guy shooting the weapon and you can't see where he shot it to, then it's hidden. If you want to make it hidden.
Yeah, that could be cool though. I mean, you know that there's shooting, but you just don't know where. You know who's shooting, but you don't know where it's going to be landing.
Yeah, but you have to have line of sight. So if a friendly unit doesn't have high line of sight to a target hex where a weapon delivered minefield is laid, but they do have line of sight to the attacker that laid the minefield, a die roll is made to see if the unit can determine where the minefield was laid. Base target number is 4, modified for terrain between the friendly unit and the attacker. Target movement and attacker movement modifiers.
There you go.
So if you can make that roll, then you can guess the trajectory, the distance, all that sort of stuff, and you can pinpoint where the mines are laid. Yeah. And it's not a hidden minefield anymore.
Yeah.
But if you don't make that roll, then it's a hidden minefield.
That's it.
That's so cool. I love it. And anytime a unit mounting an active probe ends its movement, or at any point during its movement, if using the expanded active probe rules, which are optional, but if it ends its movement and the effective radius of the probe covers any hex with an enemy minefield, the controlling player of that minefield must make a roll. On a result of 7+, any weapon-delivered minefields are revealed. On a result of 10, any pre-designated minefields laid at the start of the scenario are revealed. So
handy technology, for sure.
That's where your Ravens and all the other ones that come in with the electronics are kind of handy.
Yeah, definitely.
So you can work that into a scenario where you've got pre-laid minefields and only things with active probes can make these rolls and see if they can get them.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I like it.
I think we did did we touch on active probes when we were talking about the C3 stuff? Because that had Guardian ECM in it, but I'm not sure.
I think we very briefly mentioned them. Honestly, the active probes don't really have that much of a use unless you're playing with hidden units or with things like minefields.
Yeah, and scenario-based stuff.
Yeah, scenario-based stuff. So you have to have an active probe in order to do this, right? So it's part of the scenario rules that you have to have a unit with an active probe. But most people will just leave them out because they don't really serve much of a purpose.
Yeah. Which is a shame. You know, there's a lot of games now that are actually focusing more on scenarios. They're built. I mean, BattleTech's been out for ages, and they had a few scenarios and things like that. But a lot of the latest games, they are scenario based.
Yeah.
And you build the games around it, the system, how you build your forces, how it's played. You know, and it's very rewarding. So if you can come up with something for BattleTech like that, it's worth doing.
Yeah. And there's a lot of option out there. There's none of that like, I've seen the 3 factions that you're allowed, and I've played with all 3 of them, and I've got all the bits and pieces. You have functionally infinite content with BattleTech, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Because there's no way you can play every single combination of every in every scenario with everything in any reasonable amount of time. But if you are running a scenario, I know there's a few guys from the comments that are looking for scenarios and things. This is something that you can try and put in there.
Yeah.
So an active probe will find minefields on a 7+ or a 10+. A couple of other things, you can get different types of minefields. So we've basically covered the conventional minefields. You can drag them down to a 5, but not below without clearing them. Density chart to see if they go off or not. Density chart to see if they reduce or not.
Yeah, and how they're laid for buildings. One thing that I want to mention is bridges. If you have a hex with bridges in it, because it's essentially 2 types of terrain, really. So there's basically you roll randomly. It's essentially a 50-50, whether it lands on the bridge part or underneath. So keep that in mind if you're going to try and launch it there and you want to sort of stop it from crossing the bridge. You might get unlucky and it goes underneath.
Yeah,
so
if it's a short bridge, then it's going to end up underneath and useless.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because you don't really go under those on the maps. If you've got your own made terrain and you've got some high bridges, that could be actually quite fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 50-50 shot.
Yeah, so just keep that in mind.
So one of the cool ones, the extra ones, is a command detonated minefield. Now, basically, that is what it sounds like. It is a conventional minefield that can be set off by any friendly unit. So you all have the button. Use it wisely.
Or not.
So at any time during the turn sequence, including any phase from movement to end phase, that a defending unit has line of sight to a unit occupying a mined hex, they don't have to have line of sight to the underlying terrain in the hex as the location of the mine is known. The defender may detonate any or all of those mines. This can interrupt any action other than weapons fire, including movement. All damage and results from a minefield are immediately resolved before returning to the resolution of any other actions.
And that's the way to go.
And that is the way to go.
That is the way to go.
You hit them while they're moving.
Yeah.
It's the best way.
Especially the locust. Boom!
He just the cockpit and the back end just where are my legs? So detonating a command detonated minefield inflicts damage equal to the minefield density determined by the players before the beginning of the game to each unit occupying the target hex, as well as damage equal to half the density to each unit in each adjacent hex. Apply damage from command detonated mines to the front side of the unit and use the kick location table as normal. And yeah, it's resolved as soon as the attack occurs. So you basically have your guys sitting, I mean, this is another place where infantry is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Very cheap unit, sit it with line of sight on a 30-point command detonated minefield, wait for the enemy to advance through, let them group up a little bit, and
boom, off they go.
30 points to the dude in the middle and 15 to everybody else.
Tell you what, infantry, yeah, they're so useful. With the right stuff, the right environment, they are really, really good, aren't they?
Yeah. Especially if you're playing with any sort of hidden unit rules.
Yeah.
But, I mean, even just sitting, I mean, line of sight doesn't have a distance.
No, not really. No, it doesn't.
So if you can get them somewhere where they can see the vast majority of the map, or at least the major choke points, and you put some command detonated minefields in there, kaboom.
Yeah.
Lovely stuff.
So it is worth mentioning that there are unintentional ways of setting off mines. So if you're a pilot and you come crashing down onto a hex or whatever, you can actually unintentionally set it off. I think you roll a dice. I think it's a 7+, and that will set it off.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So you've got to be careful with that too. And there's also mechs that fall as well. So if you're doing physical attacks and you push someone off a hill and there happens to be mines waiting down the bottom, then you also roll. I think it's
you need a
7,
12.
8, or 9, or something happens or whatever. But
no,
yeah, it's just
if you're falling, you only detonate the hex on a roll of 12,
okay,
as opposed to the standard numbers. So the cool thing is the next sentence, which is a mech entering a hex and then falling in that hex during the same movement phase would need to make a roll for entering the hex and one for falling.
Yeah.
And weirdly, you use the 12 instead of the 7, 8, or 9. I mean, if you're stepping, you've got a 7, 8, or 9, but if you're falling, you've got a 12. There's a larger surface area there. I don't get that.
Well, I don't know. It is a 30-metre hex.
Yeah.
So it may be not so big.
And that's 30 metres to a side, right?
No, 30 metres...
Across.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
To a side?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Length to length. And they're, a mech's, 12...
Something like that, yeah.
12 metres? 6, 12?
Yeah.
6 metres. Two levels.
Yeah, so I guess it takes up less area as opposed to something that's running across the hex. It stops there, so you've got less chance of doing it.
I'm sure it's going to be doing something.
But if you fall in there, then presumably you are taking that damage and set it off, then you are taking that damage to
the facing. Yeah. So you do your facing.
Location of that facing,
Yeah.
Which could be bad if you fall backwards into a 30-point minefield.
Oh, yeah.
Nasty.
Fall on your face.
Well, rear armour. If you fall backwards, it's applied to rear armour. So, yeah that's not good.
Yeah. Vehicles are interesting, though. Like, if you've got hover and the... I don't know how you pronounce it. I'm pretty sure
wiggies.
It's Wiggy or Wiggy.
I usually go with wiggy.
Wing in ground effect. So they're ones that sort of stay at the same height as they go along. So they don't fly as such, but they can, They actually only set off minefields on a 12, I think it is, if they're moving through.
Yeah.
Because they don't sort of... Yeah, if they end in there, then they've got to follow the rules, but just going through it at that same height. Yeah.
Which is cool.
Nice. But that's good. Yeah, if you want to sort of get through... if you want to sort of get through a minefield area, that's something to consider.
Yeah.
Load up your infantry in there, you get right through all that passive defence.
You've only got a 12 to worry about then. But if that 12 goes off and it's a big minefield, you're dead.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Well, one thing that people might try to do to clear a minefield or to not set off a minefield is jump over it. What do we have for those people, buddy?
Jumping over.
We have active minefields. Yay! So it's basically the same as a standard everyday minefield, but anytime a ground unit expending jumping MP passes over a hex with an active minefield, it has to make a roll for the hex exactly as if the unit had entered it using non-jumping movement.
Yep.
And that is cool.
Well, you've seen they even had them in this horrible thing in Vietnam or whatever. They had the pop-up ones.
Oh, the bouncing betties.
Yeah, the bouncing betties. Yeah, same sort of principle. Horrible.
It's basically just a mech-sized bouncing betty.
I can't imagine that.
Yuck. I mean, it's cool in game.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
because you minefield, you've got lots and lots of light jumping movement. You go minefield, don't care. 30 points, don't care.
Boom. Yeah.
Oh, my legs are gone.
Now I care. I think that they actually have rules for jumping mechs that land in adjacent hexes, and it can set off minefields as well. But I think that's only for a specific.
Yeah, it's Vibro bombs.
Well,
so
let's talk about them.
Your active minefields are for jumping units, and that's basically it. It's just a standard everyday minefield, but if someone jumps over it, they still have to roll.
They still have to roll, yeah.
The Vibro bombs are really cool. When I first read about these, I loved them. I reckon they were great. They're basically weight sensitive.
Yeah.
Mines, right? So you set them before you do it. So this is another piece of record keeping that you're going to have to watch. You set it to a weight value before you plant it. So it'll be 30-point minefield at hex blah, and it's set to 50 tons.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And then it will only go off if a unit that moves over it is that weight. Okay, so it's set to go off at that weight. So if a 50-ton mech walks over there, it'll go bang. Right? I don't think they even have to...
I think it's up to whatever. It's that and above, isn't it? I'm pretty sure.
It's 10 tons either side.
10 tons either side.
I don't think you have to roll is the point. Yeah. Okay, so if it's exactly that tonnage, if it's 50 tons, and it walks over that hex, you don't roll, you don't do a density check, it goes off.
It goes off.
Okay? The problem comes when you have things that are either heavier or lighter. So a mech massing more than 10 tons heavier than the setting will set off the minefield at a distance of 1 hex for each 10 full tons by which it is heavier than the bomb's setting. So you have a 50-ton set, right, and you've got a 60-ton mech coming along, then you have to tell that player 1 hex before they get to it, and the mines will go off 1 hex before they get there, right? So there'll be a hex between them. That 60-ton mech will come through and boom, right? And nothing happens. It goes off. You have to roll for your reduction in points, and they now know that you've got a.
And that would be would that be every hex that you step as well? Because if you've got so like my Steiner Scout mechs, aka the Atlas and Fenrir and everything else at 100 tons,
will technically set them off 5 hexes before you get there.
Okay, so
and that's the point. So it's like the 50-ton will set it off exactly as it moves over where the mines are laid.
Yeah.
Right, which is what you want. Yeah. You want a 50-ton mech to go into that hex and go, aha, boom, right? But if you're 5 hexes away and you're 100 tons, you have to set that mine off. That's just how it is. The vibrations from a 100-ton mech will set the minefield off 5 hexes away. So your Steiner Scout Lance is perfectly safe, unless I set it to 100 tons.
Unless we jump.
And they're Vibro bombs.
Yeah. If we jump nearby.
Yeah, so.
They are interesting though.
Units that expend jumping MP must determine if they set off a Vibro bomb minefield when they land in the target hex or any adjacent hexes, just as if they had moved along the ground to enter that hex. So the impact vibrations from the jump, the landing, will have a chance of setting off a minefield. Which is, yeah.
They'll be handy based on sort of where you're garrisoning as well, because, you know, I mean, most of the battles are done by around the 50-odd ton units. They're like your backbone forces and things like that. But if you're talking about pirates or whatever, they generally don't have a lot of heavy stuff. You know, they're mostly vehicles, and they'll have mechs like now in the advanced years they've got more.
Yeah.
But they could plan accordingly.
But before you think that just setting them all to 100 tons and then walking away is okay, if it's 10 tons lighter or more, lighter than the Vibro bomb setting, it won't set the minefields off at all.
Yeah.
So you've got that from, I guess, 41 tons to 59 tons. Anywhere in there will set the mine off. But anything one side or the other either won't set it off at all or will set it off before it gets there.
Way too soon, yeah.
So...
Interesting. They're still handy though. I kind of like them. All right. So what else have we got? There's some others.
Yeah. Well, we've got rules for EMP minefields. We've got rules for Inferno minefields, which are really cool.
Yeah.
Basically, they just do heat damage based on as if it was 1 missile per 2 tons, 2 points of minefield. So a 30-point minefield, Inferno minefield, will do the same heat as 15 missiles. Okay. So it's 30 points of heat.
Right, okay.
Basically, it just means 1 point of heat per thing, right?
Oh, see, that's nasty. And that's good against everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Everything will be... they get obliterated. That's just... Yeah, it's insane. You can... deliver them with, as we said,
the Arrow 4 artillery.
Arrow 4 artillery missiles.
So they have
a minefield.
They have a 5 board reach for Innisphere, and I think it's 6 for the clans. They've got a little bit better.
Yeah.
So that's pretty handy. That's really handy.
Yeah. You've got EMP mines, which you have to deploy as, say command detonated or standard or vibro or whatever, right? So you say it's a 20-point command detonated EMP minefield.
Yeah, you can't deploy those during battle. if I remember rightly. I'm pretty sure they have to be done.
Yeah, it can't
at
be
the
deployed
start.
by launchers, but have to be done by mine layer infantry or mine dispensers, or placed in a predetermined hex.
Okay.
Affect all units in the mine hex upon detonation and create a 1 hex ECM bubble in the area of effect that lasts until the end phase of the following turn after detonation.
Okay.
Deliver physical damage only to conventional infantry units. All other units, the Minefield's controlling player must roll 2d6 and consult the EMP mine effects table below. Apply a +2 to this roll if the affected unit is a drone, which is another advanced rule that you can look into.
What page is that on that you're looking at there? Just so
This is 365.
it's on TAC Ops. So
TAC
still in the
Ops
TAC Ops
365, yep. Any electronic systems not mounted on an active unit are inside an EMP mine's area of effect. They are considered destroyed by the pulse. So remote sensors, C3 remote sensors, collapsible command modules, all the outside stuff that happens. And you'll see on the table, I suppose we better bing it, bing. So you'll see your 2d6 roll there.
So
and you've got
mine effects table, yeah?
Yeah. So you've got no effect, interference, and shutdown. No effect is fairly obvious, I hope. Interference, so they suffer a +2 modifier for all weapon attacks and sensor operations for 1d6 turns, during which time all of its electronics are also affected as though operating within a hostile ECM field.
Damn.
Effects wear off in the end phase of the final turn. So you roll, you get a 3, you've got 3 turns. In the end phase of the third turn, it goes away, it stops. But you've got that +2 modifier and sensor operation. So weapon attack and sensor operation.
So that's essentially the same as a sensor hit on your cockpit. If you make the +2.
So mechs, aerospace fighters, and small craft also generate 5 extra heat points per turn while affected. So it interferes with heat dissipation as well. So
yeah, that's not cool. That's not cool at all.
I like
no pun intended, but that's not.
Not cool. That'll be a subscription. So then the shutdown roll. You'll see it's mostly 9 pluses. There for the mech, it's a 9+. So unit completely shuts down for 1d6 turns, powering up normally during the end phase of the final turn. The unit is a hovercraft or wiggy vehicle at ground level, must make a successful drive skill roll with a modifier of +3 to avoid skidding. So there is the chance, it's not a very big chance, I mean you need a 9+ on 2d6 for a battle mech, but it is a chance that if you put an EMP field, minefield down, you can shut down an enemy mech for, I mean, even 1 turn.
What year did that technology become available? Does it say on there?
It's experimental 30. Oh, it's introduced 2680.
Oh, okay. So it's pretty much available, provided you can manufacture
Yeah,
it.
for the Terran Hegemony Vibro bomb version, 3065 for the Word of Blade Command detonated version, and then it's extinct 2825. And then it's reintroduced in 3058. So it's one of those lost tech things. So the Star League guys had it, then it went away, and then someone rediscovered it after the clans came through and did their business with everybody and made us hurt.
Maybe that was the Grey Death Legion. There was that story where they're on, I think it was Helm, or one of the planets.
Okay.
And there was 2... They were trying to fight after Draconis Combine or something that were trying to get to it. And then I think it was the Free Worlds League rocked up. So they're like, oh, we're in the middle of this going on, whatever, and they had to negotiate or something. Really cool story.
Really so cool the lore is really, really deep if you guys want to do narrative stuff. It's insane. There's a lot of stuff there. But yeah, they are experimental. But if you're allowing it in your games and you want to have 4 in 12 chance or 4 in 11 chance of shutting a mech down completely for D6 turns. Yeah. I think that's pretty cool.
Look, someone who plays Comstar or Word of Blake or whatever would probably have access to something like that. Yeah. So, have a scenario with it. Give it a go.
Give it a shot, see what happens. And there are mines in space, but yeah.
They've got mines for water as well. They've got little floaties on.
Yep.
And for underwater as well.
You can get land and sea versions
sea
of
versions.
pretty much every minefield, I think.
That's cool.
Active, you
put them
can't.
onto a level 1 water or whatever, because stop someone from
Yeah.
well going into it to get the benefits of heat if they've got heat sinks in their legs. So
Yeah.
sure, you can wander in there, but imagine that going off. And being in water, remember, on a 10 plus.
Yeah, so if you hit in water on a 10 plus, it actually
There's a chance for breach.
shatters the hull,
which
breaches
just
the
flips
hull.
everything. That's super dangerous.
Yeah. We'll have to do hard gel at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So there's a lot of minefields. But what about clearing them? Have you got anything?
Yeah, well, one of the other things I was thinking was combining them. So we said that 30 points is your maximum, but one minefield isn't your maximum. So you can technically combine minefields on a single hex, which means you can have a 30-point standard conventional minefield. You can have a 30-point command detonated minefield. You can have a 30-point vibro bomb minefield. You could have a 30-point inferno minefield, etc., etc., etc. As long as they're all different minefields and they don't go above 30 points individually, you can keep stacking them up. What does happen is that whenever a minefield explodes, in addition to the controlling player rolling to determine if the minefield's density is reduced, they have to also roll to determine if the additional minefields were reduced.
Yeah. I was going to say.
Yeah, so might take more than a single dice roll to reduce in a single turn.
I don't know, it sounds good to have a hex full of all these different types, but I think if something starts exploding, then you're going to start losing others as well.
Yeah.
It might not necessarily be.
So I think, though, you only ever roll to see if they set off one of them, but you have to roll to see if they reduce all of them, which is a little rude, personally, I think. Yeah, so players are using the rule that such bombs have a density as opposed to being eliminated the first time they are used, and the conventional minefield in the same hex also explodes. Yep. Yeah, so the command detonated bombs explode when the mech enters the hex, and the conventional minefield in the same hex also explodes. They need to make 2 rolls, one for the conventional minefield successful detonation and one for the successful detonation of the command detonated minefield, while it's automatically reduced for its own successful explosion, and then the player would need to make a roll for a possible reduction due to the successful detonation of the conventional minefield. So they go off, they all go off, but each one that goes off forces each other one in the area to see if it gets reduced. So you get that big single damage bang, but you're going to lose those minefields very, 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 very quickly.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right. So the hex has some flexibility because it's got all the different types in there. It'll go off doing different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're sort of...
And what you really want is for that to all go off at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Because, yeah, that would be really, really good. Yeah, so you get a -1 to the die roll for the check if the minefield was a lesser density. Apply a +1 if the minefield was of greater density.
Right.
So if a 15-point conventional minefield explodes in a hex containing a 5-point active minefield and a 20-point vibro bomb minefield, a +1 is applied to the dice roll to see if the vibro bomb minefield is reduced because it's bigger, and a -1 is applied to the active minefield because it's smaller. All right, so that minefield going off affects this one and this one, but at varying degrees.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Well, there's a lot of bookwork there.
Yeah, there's a lot of bookwork there.
Just stick to one and risk it. Risk it for the biscuit.
I was going to say, just one 30-point minefield in a single hex in a decent location, like near an objective, is enough to seriously change how your life works. But yes, on to clearing. Dear.
So that's probably not a job you want if you want to clear mines and things like that. So it says clearing minefields is a dangerous job requiring great skill and finesse. So it's usually assigned to infantry.
Because they can walk into the hex, hopefully, without setting anything off.
Yeah.
They've got a far less chance of setting things off.
Yeah. So basically, if they move into the hex and they don't do any shooting or anything like that, they roll 2d6, and on a 10 plus, they've cleared it. Now that, if you were talking just then, we were talking about combined minefields. That's not for all of them. So if you've got two or more different types, you've got to check for each one.
Yeah.
You can only check once, I think,
for one of them once per turn.
But infantry, I think you can have up to 4 different bases worth. So you could, I mean, your risk uniform goes off.
Yeah, well,
move in and
you can stack them in there.
Yeah, you've got some checks there or whatever, so that's pretty good.
The downside is if your dice roll is 5 or less, then the minefield explodes.
It goes off, yeah.
Which is sucky. You take normal damage and they remain active even after an accidental detonation, but the density is reduced.
But there's mine-sweeping engineers. They have their own rules. We'd have to look it up. I can't remember what it was off the top. So they have some different rules for clearing them. But they're, as you can imagine, they're designed to sort of take on this stuff, and they do a lot better. But I think there's still risks. I don't know.
Wow.
I think a lot of their cost comes down to C bills rather than BV.
Yeah.
If you're playing campaign rules where you have to pay people and things like that, they have a higher wage.
Yeah. So when a minesweeper platoon enters a mined hex, they may elect to disable the mines in place of a weapon attack at the controlling player's discretion. When disabling mines, the platoon's controlling player must make a 2d6 roll. If multiple types of minefields occupy the same hex, a roll must be made for each type of minefield. On a result of 9 plus, the minefield is cleared. On a result of 3 or less, it detonates.
Okay. So slightly better and a lot better, I think, for the...
Yeah. So 1 point better to actually clear them, and 2 points better to not set them off.
Yeah, that's good.
Which is really good. On any other result, they failed and the minefield remains active. But that is still pretty cool. I mean, if you have a artillery or LRM delivered minefield, you know where it is, you know it's going to hinder you, and you know how big it is. You can VTOL your combat engineers, your minesweeper engineers over there, and just say, well, we'll get rid of that before the mechs get here. And then watch them go up in smoke if you roll like I do. But
it's
there
like,
you go.
Whoops.
Yeah.
But you can use weapons.
Yep.
You can use weapons to do it. I mean, they talk about artillery and things like that, firing artillery in there, and that seems to be the most effective. But you can use things like LRMs or whatever, and so you fire into the hex, but you get the chance. The good thing about that is that you get a chance for each type if you've got a combined hex.
Yeah.
So you can do a roll for each of them.
And you can get specific mine clearing munition, like an ammunition for mine clearing.
Yeah.
We didn't go into it in the other videos because there are so many ammunition types.
Yeah.
They're everywhere, but you can actually get a specific mine clearing munition which you load up by the ton, which is pretty cool. I think it's only an LRM. Yeah, LRM 20, rocket launcher 20, MRM 20, 30 or 40, ATM 12. Or
MRMs?
Yeah, MRM 20, 30 or 40, ATM 12 or ATM 9 to clear a minefield, but no other type of missile attack. So you can't short range missile them.
Right. Sorry, MML I was thinking of, the multi-missile launcher.
Oh no, ATM, the clan version.
One.
Yeah. So, and it's only HE or standard, and the ATM 9 only high explosive HE.
Okay.
To clear the minefield. You designate the attack to clear the minefield. When the attacker hits the hex, you roll 2d6, 5 or better, it clears it.
Nice. 5 or better is good.
Yeah, 5 or better is really good. So if you have a player like me who is wont to take thunder ammunition or mine laying ammunition in their Arrow 4 artillery, then taking an opposing unit with a decent size missile rack with a decent gunnery is not a bad idea, because you can clear a hex on a 5+, or you can just load somebody up with some mine clearing ammunition, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just get a captured enemy vehicle and just like remote it through there or something. Do the whole drive it in a straight line and jump out of the driver's seat.
That'd work.
Very heroic.
You can use artillery to clear it. So when the fire mission comes in, we'll go into artillery at some point. When the fire mission comes in, you roll a 2d6 on a 5 or better, it clears the minefield. The clearing artillery fire doesn't affect adjacent hexes. And it doesn't matter what sort of ammunition you use. So that's something to keep in mind. If you are clearing minefields with artillery, you're foregoing that area effect.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
But you're clearing a minefield.
It doesn't matter, yeah.
Yeah.
Mobile structures, I think, was one I was reading before. Because mobile structures are your big things. Like massive. They take up multiple hexes and they can move or whatever. So, as you can imagine, if they roll over a hex, it detonates everything that's in there automatically. But of course, they're going to take the damage.
Yeah, but it automatically counts as cleared.
Cleared, yes.
So it detonates and it's counted as cleared. It
crushes it everything.
Rolls over everything. They're multiple hex vehicles, so
that's the way.
The artillery is an area effect weapon. So anytime the target hex of an artillery attack, but not adjacent hexes, contains a minefield, even if the artillery was not designated to clear the minefield, the controlling player should roll 2d6. On a result of 10 plus, the minefield is cleared.
Yeah. I mean, it's so much damage. It makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. So you don't have to specifically say, I'm using this to clear a minefield. If you do, you forego your extra damage, but you roll a 5 better and it's done.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you get all of your extra damage and you clear it on a 10 or better.
That's okay. A free chance at clearing, it's always good.
Up to you. You can get minesweepers. There are specific rules for specific vehicles that have minesweeper equipment added to them.
Yeah.
So you can get like battle tanks and things that you can modify to have minesweeper equipment. It's flail chains and all of that sort of stuff, the usual junk that they use. You can get clearing equipment for battle armor.
Is that right? I didn't read that.
Which is kind of cool. So you follow the standard rules for standard infantry clearing minefields, except they clear the field on a 2d6 result of 6 or more. Oh. And it only explodes on a 2+.
That's good.
On a 2 or less. Sorry. A 2, basically. So you roll your 2d6 on a 6 or better, you clear it. On a 2, you explode. Wow. But that's a battle armor unit, so there's slightly more BV put into a battle armor unit than there is into an infantry unit. But still, very useful. With mine clearing equipment on them and a decent speed, you can shut down someone who uses a lot of minefields.
That's very cool, actually.
Very cool.
That's very cool.
And if you crash an airborne unit on it, you get and roll a 5 or better, then it's cleared.
You kamikaze it a bit.
You can always just crash it. I can't get rid of this minefield. Done.
Yeah, there we go. Anything else, mate? I don't think so.
No, I think that's basically it. There's a lot of stuff there.
There's probably some other things, but I mean, just for this video, I think that covers a lot. Gives you an idea. But definitely something cool for scenario base. For sure.
I would suggest not getting into these until you get out of... don't use minefields in beginner box.
No.
You can, but don't. Okay, because they're pretty OP for beginner box.
Yeah.
But once you move out to Game of Armour Combat or Total War, I would definitely look into either working them into a scenario or just using them in your game for fun. Because, if you've got a breakthrough scenario or a snatch and grab scenario or anything that involves someone having to get somewhere specific, minefields are cool. And you don't need to necessarily use any of the rules that we've just discussed. You can cut and paste if you want to. And you don't necessarily have to put them in beforehand. You can make them all weapon delivered, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And that makes it a little bit easier to keep a track of things. But you need to have a way to keep track of the mine, the location. You need a way to keep track of its size. And that needs to be able to be varied, so no permanent marker or anything. And you need to be able to keep track of any other specifics. So if it's command detonated, if it's a Vibro bomb set to what weight, etc., etc., etc. But if you can handle the extra record keeping, then they are really, really fun, because there's nothing that upsets a Steiner scout lance like having their legs blown off before they get halfway up the map.
Yeah, that's it. It takes us so long to get there in the first place.
We are scouting!
But you can have a look at the scenarios that's in the Armoured Combat box.
And introduce a minefield.
Yeah, just modify it a bit. Just see, you know. I mean, have a look, because we played a couple of them, and some of them were quite a challenge. You start throwing in minefields in there, be like...
I mean, in those particular scenarios, I would suggest you don't use more than a couple of minefields per scenario, and give them to the defender. Right? So whoever the defender is, they get access to 2 minefields. And you can either pre-designate them and keep them secret, or you can just say, there's my minefield, and see if you can force the enemy into it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how you move in there, as long as you move in there. So you can technically push someone into a minefield.
Absolutely.
Because you are in there. You're in their hex.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't put more than 2 in there. If you're going to put the 5 standard into one of those specific scenarios, then I'd probably make the defending player lose a mech, or take a mech out, or maybe reduce the size of the mech or something like that. I don't know, but keep it a bit more balanced, because they are pretty OP.
But it's fun to experiment.
Oh, bloody oath. And if you've got an archer or some LRM carriers, then definitely consider having a crack with the thunder ammo, because I'm telling you now, it's fun.
Yeah.
It is fun.
Rightio.
All good.
I think that's it for this video.
Yeah, that was a long one, but you know.
So, no, that's good. Covered a lot of stuff there. So thank you for watching. If you found this useful, consider subscribing and tap the little notification so you see when our new videos drop.
Yep.
If you've used Minefield.
Chuck a comment down about your Minefield.
Let's hear about it. Awesome ideas.
Extravaganzas.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So that's it. Thank you, Tarron.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you, everyone.
All right.
And we'll see you in the next video.
Bye, guys.